Thank you, Demon Whiskey Nick. I was literally just telling you all that I am a little bit higher than I intended to be for this stream, clearly. Didn't even turn my microphone on like a dummy. But yeah, has everybody had a good 420? I was trying to take care of it on my way home from work, and I only smoked a little bit, but I guess it was it was really strong. Oh, sounds good. Oh, thank goodness you're not sick with the vid, Demon Whiskey Nick. That would have been awful. You went to look at an apartment and everything near it was closed. Wait, so are you saying that you think they were closed for 420 as in like they were worried about all the weed heads, or did you just mean like all the weed stores were closed? Okay, so before we start, I wanted to share this all with you on stream because I got this candle. No, like the restaurants were all closed. Oh, why? You would think they'd want to be open on 420. Anyway, I got this in the mail yesterday. And it's a candle that you scratch off and it gives you a fortune, like a fortune cookie, but a candle. It even came with a penny on top. And it smells like dark amber, which is very musky. And it's very highly fragranced. I was not expecting it to be that fragranced. But I thought we could scratch it off together and see what the candle company thinks that my fortune is. It says use the lucky penny to scratch off your fortune because I guess it's supposed to be luck-based. Oh, gross. The glue has like oxidized the penny really bad. But I got a whole American penny now. Very greasy also, that's not fun. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this on camera here. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Oh, hey, Demon Whiskey Nick. Yeah, I live in Toronto, so I'm in Canada. Where we don't have pennies anymore. We got rid of pennies entirely. They are gone from our currency. All right, so the fortune says, the path you're on will lead to success. So that's always good. How is that in terms of how is it not having pennies? Fine. It's caused literally zero problems for me in my life, except for when it happened. Because when it happened, it meant that I had to roll up all of the pennies in my house and take them to the bank and get that dealt with. And my mom works at the bank, so it was also annoying for her. But other than that, it was fine. That was annoying for like a day. So yeah, that's super vague fortune, but always nice to know that I'm apparently doing the right thing. Tell that to my anxious brain, that'd be great. Having such a hard time with the music, y'all. Exactly, Dean Whiskey. Yeah, they weren't like worthless. You had to just take them to the bank. The bank collected them. Which is what most places do, like most countries when they eliminate a form of currency. They let everybody change it over because it's, you know, technically legal tender when you're talking about like physical currency, like a fiat currency. If it's backed by the government, then they can't just like eliminate the value of your entire currency if they're changing something about it. It's a complicated thing to do with international economics. That right now you can tell I'm high because I'm trying to explain it to you like I know anything. And I don't. I mostly just listen to my weird and kind of messed up family talk about economics a lot. And of course they do. Because Daddy's right wing. So. Yeah, but okay, so now that I know what my fortune is, I will light it, but it might be so strong that I want to die. Because I can smell it from here and it's not even lit. I don't know if they're too lazy and too big. Like, I would say, like, the Canadian penny project or whatever would have been about of the same scope. And you're talking about just, like, eliminating because it's just a physical piece of currency that they're eliminating, right? They're not eliminating, the value 1 penny. So, like, when we're talking about in the banks, and you're talking about with debit, or, like, with a credit card or like your bank account, right? On paper, you can still have like the 1 penny value. You just don't have a coin for it. And because the world is moving mainly into larger transactions anyway, it's very rare that like the physical 1 penny thing is, you know. Yeah, we're pretty much as big, yeah. The dog just whined at me. She's like, people did not come here to listen to you talk about this. Could you not right now? Like, I don't even want to listen to you. Like, fair enough. But yeah. I'm just, like I said, just a little bit too high, so I'm gonna be pretty relaxed, but I might ramble a lot. I might talk about nonsense. Penny talk, yes. Like, I can try to pretend like I know anything. Right? Like, I think I fooled you. Welcome to Penny Talk. Yes, that is a good one. That was an awkward position to be in. I did my makeup high too, and that's always fun. Because I can't tell if I actually look fine or if my vision is just all, you know, weird. And I've actually got like lipstick over here or something. See, I'm like checking my phone on stream and shit. It's like the worst etiquette ever. So yeah, we're gonna get going on the book here, and like today's probably not a good day for me to be like really distracted. Because we have to catch up. Because right now we've got it planned so that next Wednesday is when Jackie is coming back to talk about the end of part 2. And I don't think we're that close. I don't think we're close enough yet. So I'm gonna see how far we get today before Jackie's stream. And then On Sunday, we're going to try to make up the difference. And if it seems like that's just not going to happen, then definitely I'll have to move that date. But I don't want to have to move that date because I did well and I established it really early. And I don't want to like make that a whole thing for both you guys and for Jackie. So I'd rather not do that. So right now she's slotted April 27th. So. Oh yes, before 6. Go. Okay. So in that case, I'm gonna stop just rambling at you, and we're gonna get started. We are on chapter 37, and we were on a we're on a cliffhanger. That's the word for it. Where they were just stealing the book from the vault in the summer court, or that like lighthouse shack thing. They being Feyre and Amren. And it's like, as soon as she touched the book, it knew that it wasn't really the Summer King. OMG, there's books. Yeah. So yeah, she's not managed to trick the book. Unfortunately, it seems. And that is probably a bad thing. So yeah. Please play the playlist so that I can start reading the book. Okay, I've clicked the shuffle button like twice. Eventually it'll kick in. And if it doesn't, well, not much I can do about that, then there's there. So, there we go. No! Amren screamed at the door in an instant. Her fist a radiant forge as she slammed it into the lead. Once, twice. And above, the rush and gargle of water tumbling downstairs, filling the chamber. No. I reached to the door, sliding the box into the wide inside pocket of my leather jacket, while Amren's blazing palm flattened against the door, burning, heating the metal, swirls and whirls radiating out through it as if they were a language all her own. And then the door burst open, only for a flood to come crashing in. I grappled for the threshold, but missed as the water slammed me back, sweeping me under the dark, icy surface. The cold stole the breath from my lungs. Find the floor. My feet connected, and I pushed up, gulping down air, scanning the dim chamber for Amren. She was clutching the threshold, eyes on me, hand out, glowing bright. The water already flowed up to my breasts, and I rushed to her, fighting the onslaught flooding the chamber, willing that new strength in my body into my arms. Second, this dog. What? She's also very bad today, guys. I'm not happy with her. You want to tell everybody what you did? She knocked over the kitchen trash can while we were out. And she chewed on chicken wings. And we don't know what happened in terms of the number. She's never knocked that trash can over before. He's a naughty Chewini. Yeah, I'm still letting her be on my lap for pats. Because I can't help it. The water became easier, as if that kernel of power soothed its current, its wrath. But Amryn was now climbing up the threshold. "You have it?" she shouted over the roaring water. I nodded, and I realized her outstretched hand wasn't for me, but for the door she'd forced back into the wall, holding it away until I could get out. I shoved through the archway, Amryn slipping around the threshold, just as the door rolled shut again, so violently that I wondered at the power she'd used to push it back. The only downside was that the water in the hall now had much less space to fill. "Oh," she said, but I didn't wait for her approval before I grabbed her, hooking her feet around my stomach as I hoisted her onto my back. "Just do what you have to," I gritted out, neck craned above the rising water, not too much farther to the stairs that were now a cascade. Where the hell was Rasand? But Amryn held out a palm in front of us, and the water buckled and trembled. Not a clear path, but a break in the current. I directed that kernel of Tarquin's power, my power now, toward it. The water calmed further, straining to obey my command. I ran, gripping her thighs probably hard enough to bruise. Step by step, water now raging now at my jaw, now at my mouth. But I hit the stairs, almost slipping on the slick step, and Amryn's gasp stopped me cold. Not a gasp of shock, but a gasp for air as a wall of water poured down the stairs, as if a mighty wave had swept over the entire site. Even my own mastery over the element could do nothing against it. I had enough time to gulp down air, to grab Amryn's legs and brace myself, and watch as the door atop the stairs slid shut, sealing us in a watery tomb. I was dead. I knew I was dead, and there was no way out of it. I had consumed my last breath, and I would be aware for every second until my lungs gave out and my body betrayed me, and I swallowed that fatal mouthful of water. Amryn beat at my hands until I let go, until I swam after her, trying to calm my panicking heart, my lungs, trying to convince them to make each second count as Amryn reached the door and slammed her palm into it. Symbols flared, again and again, but the door held. I reached her, shoving my body into the door over and over, and the lead dented beneath my shoulders. Then I had talons, not claws, and I was slicing and punching at the metal. My lungs were on fire. My lungs were seizing. Amryn pounded on the door, that bit of fey-like guttering, as if it were counting down her heartbeats. I had to take a breath, had to open my mouth and take a breath, had to ease the burning. Then the door was ripped away, and the fey-light remained bright enough for me to see the three beautiful, ethereal faces hissing through fish's teeth as their spindly, webbed fingers snatched us out of the stairs and into their frog skin arms. Water wraiths. But I couldn't stand it. And as those spiny hands grabbed my arm, I opened my mouth, water shoving in, cutting off thought and sound and breath. My body seized, those talons vanishing. Debris and seaweed and water shot past me, and I had the vague sense of being hurtled through the water, so fast the water burned beneath my eyelids. And then hot air. Air. But my lungs were full of water as a fist slammed in my stomach and I vomited water across the waves. I gulped down air, blinking at the bruised purple and blushing pink of the morning sky. A sputter and a gasp not too far from me, and I treaded water as I turned in the bay to see Amryn vomiting as well, but alive. And in the waves between us, onyx hair plastered to their strange heads like helmets, the water wraiths floated, staring with dark, large eyes. The sun was rising beyond them, the city encircling us stirring. The one in the center said, "Our sister's debt is paid." And then they were gone. Amren was already swimming for the distant mainland shore. Praying they didn't come back and make a meal of us, I hurried after her, trying to keep my movements small to avoid detection. We both reached a quiet, sandy cove and collapsed. So the water wraiths saved them. See, not such a bad thing that she helped them out, is it? Guys, I'm gonna murder this shitty old computer. It's just loading. It's like literally only trying to load one web page. Socialism wins again. Correct. See, sometimes when you're nice to people, they're nice to you. A shadow blocked out the sun, and a boot towed my calf. "What?" said Rasan, still in... What the fuck kind of voice was that? Ugh. It's so fucking high. Cat's getting me, hey! Good to see you. "What?" said Rasan, still in battle black. "Are you two doing?" I opened my eyes to find Amren hoisting herself up on her elbows. "Where the hell were you?" she demanded. "You two set off every damn trigger in the place. I was hunting down each guard who went to sound the alarm." "Oh, hey, Anya." My throat was ravaged, and sand tickled my cheeks, my bare hands. "I thought you had it covered," he said to her. Amren hissed. "That place, or that damn book, nearly nullified my powers. We almost drowned." His gaze shot to me. "I didn't feel it through the bond." "It probably nullified that too, you stupid bastard." Amren snapped. His eyes flickered. "Did you get it?" Not at all concerned that we were half drowned and had very nearly been dead. I touched my jacket, the heavy metal lump within. "Good," Reese said, and I looked behind him at the sudden urgency in his tone. Sure enough, in the castle across the bay, people were darting about. "I missed some guards," he gritted out, grabbed both our arms, and we vanished. The dark wind was cold and roaring, and I had barely enough strength to cling to him. It gave out entirely, along with Amren's, as we landed in the tower house foyer, and we both collapsed to the wood floor, spraying sand and water on the carpet. Cassian shouted from the dining room behind us. "What the hell?" I glared up at Rasan, who merely stepped toward the breakfast table. "I'm waiting for an explanation too," he merely said to wide-eyed Cassian, Azrael, and more. But I turned to Amren, who was still hissing on the floor, her red-rimmed eyes narrowed. "How?" During the tithe, the water wraith emissary said they had no gold, no food to pay. They were starving. Every word ached, and I thought I might vomit again. He'd deserve it if I puked all over the carpet, though he'd probably take it from my wages. So I gave her some of my jewelry to pay her dues. She swore that she and her sisters would never forget the kindness. "Can someone explain, please?" More called from the room beyond. We remained on the floor as Amren began quietly laughing, her small body shaking. "What?" I demanded. Only an immortal with a mortal heart would have given one of those horrible beasts the money. It's so... Amren laughed again, her dark hair plastered with sand and seaweed. For a moment, she even looked human. "Whatever luck you live by, girl. Thank the cauldron for it." The others were all watching, but I felt a chuckle whisper out of me, followed by a laugh, as rasping and raw as my lungs, but a real laugh, perhaps edged by hysteria and profound relief. We looked at each other and laughed again. "Ladies," Rasan purred, a silent order. I groaned as I got to my feet, sand falling everywhere. What is he, the principal? And offered a hand to Amran to rise. Her grip was firm, but her quicksilver eyes were surprisingly tender as she squeezed it before snapping her fingers. We were both instantly clean and warm, our clothes dry, save for a wet patch around my breast, where that box waited. My companions were solemn-faced as I approached and reached inside that pocket, the metal bit into my fingers, so cold it burned. I dropped it onto the table. It thudded, and they all recoiled, swearing. Reese crooked a finger at me. "One last task, Feyre. Unlock it, please." My knees were buckling, my head spinning, and mouth bone dry and full of salt and grit, but I wanted to be rid of it. I slid into a chair, tugging that hateful box to me, and placed a hand on top. "Hello, liar," it purred. "Hello," I said softly. "Will you read me?" No. The others didn't say a word, though I felt their confusion shimmering in the room. Only Reese and Amran watched me closely. "Open," I said silently. "Say please." "Please," I said. The book, was silent. Then it said, "Like calls to like." "Open," I gritted out. "Unmade and made, made and unmade. That is the cycle. Like calls to like." Talking about homeopathy? The book is homeopathic. Didn't we already hear something like that before? That sounds familiar. I know I've made jokes about homeopathy on here before, but I can't remember if it was just me being a bitch or it was, like, real to do with the book. I pushed my hand harder, so tired I didn't care about the thoughts tumbling out, the bits and pieces that were a part of and not part of me. Heat and water and ice and light and shadow. "Cursebreaker," it called to me, and the box clicked open. It was about someone getting turned into a red mist, okay? So, I don't know, does anybody want to find out? Does the author have opinions about homeopathy, and is that why stuff like this keeps coming into my head? Or once again, is that just me being a bitch who likes to make fun of bunk science? Cursebreaker, it called me, and the box clicked open. I sagged back in my chair, grateful for the roaring fire in the nearby fireplace. Cassian's hazel eyes were dark. "I never want to hear that voice again." "Well, you will," Rasan said blandly, lifting the lid, "because you're coming with us to see those mortal queens as soon as they deign to visit." I was too tired to think about that, about what we had left to do. I peered into the box. It was not a book, not with paper and leather. It had been formed of dark metal plates, bound on 3 rings of gold, silver, and bronze. Okay, and is this a Mormon thing? It's got Mormon energy for sure. Each word carved with painstaking precision in an alphabet I could not recognize. Yes, it indeed turned out my reading lessons were unnecessary. Reese left it inside the box as we all peered in, then recoiled. Only Amren remained staring at it. The blood drained from her face entirely. "What language is that?" Moore asked. I thought Amren's hands might have been shaking, but she shoved them into her pockets. "It is no language of this world." Only Reese was unfazed by the shock on her face, as if he'd suspected what the language might be, why he had picked her to be a part of this hunt. "What is it then?" Azriel asked. She stared and stared at the book, as if it were a ghost, as if it were a miracle, and said, "It is the Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue." Those quicksilver eyes shifted to Rasand, and I realized she'd understood, too, why she'd gone. Rasand said, "I heard a legend that it was written in a tongue of mighty beings who feared the cauldron's power and made the book to combat it. Mighty beings who were here and then vanished. You are the only one who can uncode it." It was Moore who warned, "Don't play those sorts of games, Rasand." But he shook his head. "Not a game. It was a gamble that Amren would be able to read it, and a lucky one." Amren's nostrils flared delicately, and for a moment I wondered if she might throttle him for not telling her his suspicions. That the book might indeed be more than the key to our own salvation. Reese smiled at her in a way that said he'd be willing to let her try. Even Cassian slid a hand toward his fighting knife. But then Rasand said, "I thought, too, that the book might also contain the spell to free you and send you home, if they were the ones who wrote it in the first place." Amren's throat bobbed, slightly. Cassian said, "Shit." Reese went on. "I did not tell you my suspicions, because I did not want to get your hopes up. But if the legends about the language were indeed right, perhaps you might find what you've been looking for, Amren." "I need the other piece before I can begin decoding it." Her voice was raw. "Hopefully our request to the Mortal Queens will be answered soon," he said, frowning at the sand and water staining the foyer. "And hopefully the next encounter will go better than this one." Her mouth tightened, yet her eyes were blazing bright. "Thank you." 10,000 years in exile, alone. Moore sighed, a loud, dramatic sound, no doubt meant to break the heavy silence, and complained about wanting the full story of what happened. But Azriel said, "Even if the book can nullify the cauldron, there's Jurian to contend with." We all looked at him. "That's the piece that doesn't fit," Azriel clarified, tapping a scarred finger on the table. "Why resurrect him in the first place? How does the king keep him bound? Why does the king have over Jurian to keep him loyal?" "I considered that," Reese said, taking a seat across from me at the table, right between his two brothers. Of course he had considered it. Reese shrugged. "Jurian was obsessive in his pursuits of things. He died with many of those goals left unfinished." Moore's face paled a bit. "If he suspects Miriam is alive..." "Odds are, Jurian believes Miriam is gone," Reese said. "And who better to raise his former lover than a king with a cauldron able to resurrect the dead?" "Would Jurian ally with Hybern just because he thinks Miriam is dead and wants her back?" Cassian said, bracing his arms on the table. He'd do it to get revenge on Draken for winning her heart, Rhys said. He shook his head. We'll discuss this later. And I made a note to ask him who these people were, what their history was. To ask Rhys why he'd never hinted under the mountain that he knew the man behind the eye on Amarantha's ring. After I'd had a bath and water and a nap. But they all looked to me and Amren again, still waiting for the story. Brushing a few grains of sand off, I let Amren launch into the tale, each word more unbelievable than the last. Across the table, I lifted my gaze from my clothes and found Rhys's eyes already on me. I inclined my head slightly and lowered my shield only long enough to say down the bond. To the dreams that are unanswered. Oh, to the dreams that are answered. A heartbeat later, a sensual caress trailed along my mental shield. A polite request. I let it drop. Let him in. And his voice filled my head. To the huntresses who remember to reach back for those less fortunate. And water wraiths who swim very, very fast. That's chapter 37. Ooh. That felt extremely intimate at the end there. Great. But yeah, okay, so they've got the book now. We know a little bit more about what Amren is, I think. So she was something that was trapped by these holy beings who built the cauldron, right? And I think we already knew that, but like we're just starting to get just a little bit more flavor on it. And so she's the only one who's going to be able to speak that language. She'll have to decode the book. Kind of cool. Glad the water wraiths were there for sure. That was very helpful. All right. 38. Guys, I don't know what to do about this stupid thing. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. Here is what I'm going to do. Let's take 1 second and just switch computers. This might work, this might not work. Let's find out. Probably fine. Wake up. The other computer heard me saying that I was going to do something, and it was like, no, wake up, I'll be fine. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, I gotta trust this other computer because now I can figure out what the hell's going on here. See, technology just I'm just gonna put this back here in this box for now. Can't. All right. Chapter 38. Amrin took the book to wherever it was she lived in Valaris, leaving the 5 of us to eat. While Reese told them of our visit to the summer court, I managed to scarf down breakfast before the exhaustion of staying up all night, unlocking those doors, and very nearly dying hit me. When I awoke, the house was empty, the afternoon sunlight warm and golden, and the day so unusually warm and lovely that I brought a book down to the small garden in the back. Oh, she's gonna have a nice day. She's gonna read in the backyard under the sun. You're gonna have a hammock and some lemonade too? The sun eventually shifted, shading the garden to the point of frigidness again. Not quite willing to give up the sun yet, I trudged the 3 levels to the rooftop patio to watch it set. Oh, she's back there the whole damn day! Of course. Rasan was already lounging in one of the white-painted iron chairs, an arm slung over the back while his other hand idly gripped a glass of some sort of liquor, a crystal decanter full of it, set on the table before him. Getting drunk in the backyard. His wings were draped behind him on the tile floor, and I wondered if he was also taking advantage of the unusually mild day to sun them as I cleared my throat. I know you're there, he said, without turning from the view of the Sidra and the red-gold sea beyond. I scowled. If you want to be alone, I can go. He jerked his chin toward the empty seat at the iron table. Not a glowing invitation, but I sat down. There was a wood box beside the decanter, and I might have thought it was something for whatever he was drinking had I not noticed the dagger fashion of mother of pearl in the lid. Had I not sworn I could smell the sea and heat and soil that was Tarquin? What is that? Reese drained his glass, held up a hand, the decanter floating to him on a phantom wind, and poured himself another knuckles length before he spoke. I debated it for a good while, you know, he said, staring out at his city. Whether I should just ask Tarquin for the book. But I thought that he might very well say no, then sell the information to the highest bidder. I thought he might say yes, and it'd still wind up with too many people knowing our plans and the potential for that information to get out. At the end of the day, I needed the why of our mission to remain secret for as long as possible. Okay, so I know he's really telling her so that we'll be like, get over the fact that he didn't just ask, because I know all of us were thinking it. Like, why didn't you just ask, dude? But that's why. Good enough reason? I don't know, but a reason, okay. He drank again and dragged a hand through his blue-black hair. I didn't like stealing from him. I didn't like hurting his guards. I didn't like vanishing without a word when, ambition or no, he did truly want an alliance, maybe even friendship. No other high lords have ever brothered. Have ever brothered. I mean, yeah. No other high lords have ever bothered, or dared. But I think Tarquin wanted to be my friend. Yeah, because he's not an idiot. You kinda are. I glanced between him and the box and repeated, "What is that?" "Open it." I gingerly flipped back the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of white velvet, 3 rubies glimmered, each the size of a chicken egg, each so pure and richly colored that they seemed crafted of. "Blood rubies," he said. What the fuck is that? I pulled back the fingers that had been inching toward the stones. In the summer court, when a grave insult has been committed, they send a blood ruby to the offender. An official declaration that there is a price on their head, that they are now hunted and will soon be dead. The box arrived at the Court of Nightmares an hour ago. Ooh, So see, they wanted to be friends, and now they want to murder you. That's the opposite of friends. Good job, idiot. But also, okay, I feel like I'm missing something here, and this feels like something I should know about. So maybe explain, is a blood ruby like a thing? Like, is that like a magic rock made out of blood? I don't understand. Either way, sounds gross, but kind of also sounds really cool and like I want one. Well, probably not. Because if it's like a thing, then there's probably a reason I don't want it. But if it's just like a funky name for a cool stone, then I want it. I'm just trying to decide if these are cool or not. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Anyway. Mother above. They don't believe in gods. I take it one of these has my name on it. And yours. And Amran's. The lid flipped shut on a dark wind. I made a mistake, he said. I opened my mouth, but he went on. I should have wiped the minds of the guards and let them continue on. Instead, I knocked them out. It's been a while since I had to do any sort of physical defending like that. I was so focused on my Illyrian training that I forgot the other arsenal at my disposal. He probably awoke and went right to him. He would have noticed the book was missing soon enough. We could have denied that we stole it and chalked it up to a coincidence. He drained his glass. I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world if you do that every now and then. You've been told you are now public enemy number 1 with the Summer Court, and you're fine with it? No, but I don't blame you. He loosed a breath, staring out at his city as the warmth of the day succumbed to winter's bite once more. It didn't matter to him. Perhaps you could return the book once we've neutralized the cauldron. Apologize. Reese snorted. No. Amran will get that book for as long as she needs it. Then make it up to him in some way. Clearly you wanted to be his friend as much as he wanted to be yours. You wouldn't be so upset otherwise. I'm not upset, I'm pissed off. Semantics. He gave me a half smile. Feuds like this one, we just started. Feuds like this one, we can just. It's like just. I was said to myself. Feuds like the one we just started can last centuries, millennia. If that's the cost of stopping this war, helping Amran, I'll pay it. He'd pay with everything he had, I realized. Any hopes for himself, his own happiness. Do the others know about the blood rubies? Azrael was the one who brought them to me. I'm debating how I'll tell Amran. Why? Darkness filled those remarkable eyes. Because her answer would be to go to Adriata and wipe the city off the map. I shuddered. Exactly, he said. I stared out of Valaris with him, listening to the sounds of the day wrapping up and the night unfolding. Adriata felt rudimentary by comparison. I understand, I said, rubbing some warmth into my now chilled hands. Why you did what you did. Why you did what you had to do in order to protect this city. Imagining the destruction that had been wreaked upon Adriata here in Valaris made my blood run cold. His eyes slid to me, wary and dull. I swallowed. And I understand why you will do anything to keep it safe during the times ahead. And your point is? A bad day. This was a bad day, I realized, for him. I didn't scowl at the bite in his words. Get through this war, Rasand, and then worry about Tarquin and the Blood Rubies. Nullify the cauldron, stop the king from shattering the wall and enslaving the human realm again, and then we'll figure out the rest after. You sound as if you plan to stay here for a while. A bland, but edged question. I can find my own lodging, if that's what you're referring to. Maybe I'll use that generous paycheck to get myself something lavish. Come on, wink at me, play with me, just stop looking like that. You can see my face now, I'm sorry. Aha! Once again, the computer's dead. I totally get what she's trying to do here, though. She's like, come on, I'm being funny. I'm doing a jape. Feel better. Fortunately, that usually doesn't work. In my experience. Surprisingly, the candle is not overwhelming me, by the way. I was really concerned about it, but here we go. He only said, spare your paycheck. Your name has already been added to the list of those approved to use my household credit. Buy whatever you wish. Buy yourself a whole damn house if you want. I ground my teeth, and maybe it was panic or desperation, but I said sweetly, I saw a pretty shop across the Sidra the other day. It sold what looked to be lots of lacy little things. Am I allowed to buy that on your credit too? Or does that come out of my personal funds? Now she's trying to be sexy with him and he's also not taking that bait. Ugh, the worst. Those violet eyes again drifted to me. I'm not in the mood. For anything? No, for nothing? Dude, come on, do something. Ugh. There was no humor, no mischief. I could go warm myself by the fire inside, but he had stayed and fought for me. Week after week, he'd fought for me, even when I had no reaction, even when I had barely been able to speak or bring myself to care if I lived or died, or ate or starved. I couldn't leave him to his own dark thoughts, his own guilt. He'd shouldered them alone long enough. So I held his gaze. I never knew Illyrians were such morose drunks. I'm not drunk. I'm drinking, he said, his teeth flashing a bit. Again, semantics. I leaned back in my seat, wishing I'd brought my coat. Maybe you should have slept with Cressida after all, so you could both be sad and lonely together. So you're entitled to have as many bed days as you want, but I can't get a few hours? Yeah, maybe he wants his space. Oh, take however long you want to mope. I was going to invite you to come shopping with me for said lacy little unmentionables, but sit up here forever if you have to. Is that... Would he want to do that? I think he likes it more if you're embarrassed, and if you're taking him with you, then you're not. And then it's not sexy anymore, then it's just shopping. He didn't respond. I went on. Maybe I'll send a few to Tarquin, with an offer to wear them for him if he forgives us. Maybe he'll take those blood rubies right back. I don't think that's how that works. His mouth barely tugged up at the corners. He'd see that as a taunt. I gave him a few smiles and he handed over a family heirloom. I bet he'd give me the keys to his territory if I showed up wearing those undergarments. Someone thinks mighty highly of herself. Why shouldn't I? You seem to have difficulty not staring at me day and night. Oh my god. Guys. There it was. A kernel of truth and a question. Am I supposed to deny? He drawled, but something sparked in those eyes. That I find you attractive? Oh! Cute. You've never said it. I've told you many times, quite frequently, how attractive I find you. I shrugged, even as I thought of all those times when I dismissed them as teasing compliments, nothing more. Well, maybe you should do a better job of it. The gleam in his eyes turned into something predatory. Ooh. A thrill went through me. A thrill went through me as he braced his powerful arms on the table and purred. Is that a challenge, Farah? Do you want to play this game? Oh no, do you want to play this game? I held that predator's gaze, the gaze of the most powerful male in Prithian. Is it? His pupils flared. Gone was the quiet sadness, the isolated guilt. Only that lethal focus on me, on my mouth, on the bob of my throat as I tried to keep my breathing even. He said, slow and soft. Why don't we go down to that store right now, Farah, so you can try on those lacy little things, so I can help you pick which one to send to Tarquin. Stop it. It's just shopping. Stop trying to make it sexy. But also don't, but do, but don't. My toes curled inside my fleece-lined slippers. She's wearing slippers? He's getting this hot and bothered over a girl in slippers? Ugh. I'm, of course, imagining, like, big old, like, fuzzy ones. Which you can be sexy in anything, but, I don't know. Yeah, that's right, Pippino. Big bunnies. My toes curled inside my fleece-lined slippers. Such a dangerous line we walked together. The ice-kissed night wind rustled our hair. But Reese's gaze cut skyward. And a heartbeat later, Azrael shot from the clouds like a spear of darkness. I wasn't sure whether I should be relieved or not, but I left before Azrael could land, giving the High Lord and his spy master some privacy. Foot fetish confirmed. Yeah. Oh, can I smell him after? No. Fingers crossed for you, Kate-Trisha. I know searching for an apartment is just the worst, and so I really want this to work out for you. As soon as I entered the dimness of the stairwell, the heat rushed from me, leaving a sick, cold feeling in my stomach. There was flirting, and then there was this. I had loved Tamlin. Loved him so much I had not minded destroying myself for it. For him. And then everything had happened, and now I was here, and I might have very well gone to that pretty shop with Rasan. It's just shopping! I know what you mean, but... don't... just shopping! Anyway. You'd get there and you'd be like, this isn't hot anymore. I'm looking at price tags and I put on something that didn't fit. I feel all weird about my body. Oh, she's going to talk about what she thinks would have happened, and I don't know. I could almost see what would have happened. The shop ladies would have been polite, a bit nervous, and given us privacy as we sat on the settee in the back of the shop while I went behind the curtained-off chamber to try on the red lace set I'd eyed thrice now. But she wants red lacy underpants. But also, like, lace underwear is super uncomfortable. So, like, if you're not wearing it for someone, what's the goddamn point? That's my opinion. But... And when I emerged, mustering up more bravado than I felt, Reese would have looked me up and down. Twice. And he would have kept staring at me as he informed the shop ladies that the store was closed and they should all come back tomorrow, and we leave the tab on the counter. No. No. You can't do that to a business. I would have stood there, naked save for scraps of red lace, while we listened to the quick, discreet sounds of them closing up and leaving. Guys, no. And he would have looked at me the entire time. At my breasts visible through the lace, at the plane of my stomach, now finally looking less starved and taut, at the sweep of my hips and thighs. Between them. Then he would have met my gaze again, and crooked a finger with a single murmured, "Come here." And I would have walked to him, aware of every step, as I at last stopped in front of where he sat, between his legs. Stop! Stop! Ah! His hands would have slid to my waist. The calluses scraping my skin. Ugh, I hate that. I don't love that feeling. Any of y'all got partners with calloused hands? Just if it just hits wrong, it's like, ah! But, you know. Then he'd have tugged me a bit closer before leaning in to brush a kiss to my navel. His tongue... Ah! And I swore as I slammed into the post of the stairwell landing. Yeah, pay attention to where you're going. Oh, okay, Drisha. Jealous. Well, like, and this is the thing, now we're just going to talk about hands. Like, that was sexy, but whatever. Yeah, like, my partner has really calloused hands. He does. But they're also, like, hypersensitive to stuff, despite the callousing, because I think the callousing is just not, because it's not on the fingertips, because they're not necessarily all from, like, fingertip and, like, manual labor thingies. They're from, like, injuries. Sorry, honey. They're from injuries. But yeah. And so he also is, like, kind of allergic to the cold, if that makes any sense. Like, if he gets too cold and it's, like, just to do with the exact, like, temperature mixed with the humidity, if it hits just the wrong cross-section of that, he breaks out in hives. Should I be outing him on that? Probably not, but sorry. Hi, yeah. It's true. It's true. But yeah, like, guitar calluses are the worst. Feel spiky. Yeah, spiky. And I know that mainly because I used to play guitar and I had those calluses, and if I brushed myself the wrong way, I'd be like, ooh, spiky hand. I don't like that. To handle things that are too cold all the time, he'll cry out, my baby hands. Oh, Pippa, he's a computer human, so he has baby hands. Yeah. See, like, that's like my partner's like palms and fingertips. Perfectly fine. No problems there. In fact, they're so sensitive that between the calluses that are more like on the sides of his fingers is where they are mainly. It's between the calluses and the way they catch things, and then also his like weirdly sensitive palms and fingertips. Like, there are certain materials and fabrics and things for like our sheets, or like if I'm gonna buy him a sweater or something to like know that, oh, he doesn't like that. I guess it feels weird on his baby hand. Whereas, like, I craft, so I don't have a lot of calluses, but my hands have been through a lot, and I'm allergic to things, and I'll just, like, let certain allergies just flare up if I'm in the middle of something, because I'm like, whatever. Oh, I'm working with a resin that's particularly toxic? Great. Just pour that on my skin. The micro blisters will go away. It's not fun. Anyway, back to sexy book. And I blinked as the world returned, and I realized I glared the eye tattooed in my hand and hissed both with my tongue and that silent voice within the bond itself. Prick. Oh, Rasan was making her think the sexy things. Well, I'm also cackling. Cat's getting me at the baby hands thing, because I'm only just now starting to come out of the weirdly too high fog I've been this whole stream. But I'm still not out yet. Not out of the woods yet, folks. In the back of my mind, a sensual male voice chuckled with midnight laughter. Mind freaked. Every time I think of that, I'm gonna stop again and tell you guys a story, because this also has to do with my Twilight years. Not meaning when I'm elderly, but meaning when I was super into Twilight. in high school, in like the 9th grade. My very best friend, who was also really into Twilight at the time. And there are no promises, but there is a minor chance this video may still be on the internet somewhere. But we did attempt to do like a funny recreation of the trailer, and there was one time where she got really close to the camera, and this is all I can think of when I hear mind freak, is that she tried to do like the mind freak thing from the intro of the show, but like really close to the camera, but she just said it like mind freak. It's like the little 13-year-old girl just like mind freak into the camera, and I'm sorry. I can't even recreate it for you, but it was so fucking stupid. It's one of the cringiest things I've ever seen in my goddamn life. Even then, and now I imagine it's just oof. So, I just get really embarrassed when I hear that. Anyway, like I said, not out of the woods yet. My face burning, cursing him for the vision he'd slipped past my mental shields, I reinforced them as I entered my room and took a very, very cold bath. I ate with more that night beside the crackling fire in the townhouse dining room, Reese and the others off somewhere, and when she finally asked why I kept scowling every time Rasan's name was mentioned, I told her about the vision he'd sent into my mind. She'd laughed until wine came out of her nose, and when I scowled at her, she told me I should be proud. When Reese was prepared to brew it took nothing short of a miracle to get him out of it. I tried to ignore the silent sense of triumph, even as I climbed into bed. I was just starting to drift off, well past 2 a.m, thanks to chatting with Moore on the couch in the living room for hours and hours about all the great and terrible places she'd seen, when the house let out a groan. The wood itself was being warped. The house began to moan and shudder, the colored glass lights in my room tinkling. I jolted upright, twisting to the open window. Clear skies, nothing but the darkness leaking into my room from the hall door. I knew that darkness. A kernel of it lived in me. Oh no. It rushed in from the cracks of the door like a flood. The house shuddered again. I vaulted from bed, yanked the door open, and darkness swept past me on a phantom wind, full of stars and flapping wings, and pain. So much pain and despair and guilt and fear. I hurtled into the hall, utterly blind in the impenetrable dark. But there was a thread between us, and I followed it, to where I knew his room was. I fumbled for the handle, then more night and stars and wind poured out, my hair whipping around me, and I lifted an arm to shield my face as I edged into the room. "Rasand!" No response, but I could feel him there, feel that lifeline between us. I followed it until my shins banged into what had to be his bed. "Rasand!" I said, over the wind and dark. The house shook, the floorboards clattering under my feet. I patted the bed, feeling sheets and blankets. Down, and then a hard, taut male body. But the bed was enormous, and I couldn't get a grip on him. "Rasand!" Around and around the darkness swirled, the beginning and end of the world. I scrambled onto the bed, lunging for him, feeling what was his arm, then his stomach, then his shoulders. His skin was freezing as I gripped his shoulders and shouted his name. No response, and I slid a hand up to his neck, to his mouth, to make sure he was still breathing, that this wasn't his power floating away from him. Icy breath hit my palm, and, bracing myself, I rose up on my knees, aiming blindly, and slapped him. My palm stung, but he didn't move. I hit him again, pulling on that bond between us, shouting his name down it like it was a tunnel, banging on that wall of ebony adamant within his mind, roaring at it. A crack in the dark, and then his hands were on me, flipping me, pinning me with expert skill to the mattress, a taloned hand at my throat. I went still. "Rasand," I breathed. "Reese," I said through the bond, putting a hand against that inner shield. The dark shuddered. I threw my own power out, black to black, soothing his darkness, the rough edges, willing it to calm, to soften. My darkness sang his own a lullaby, a song my wet nurse had hummed when my mother had shoved me into her arms to go back to attending parties. "It was a dream," I said. His hand was so cold. "It was a dream." Again, the dark paused. I sent my own veils of night brushing up against it, running star-flecked hands down it. And for a heartbeat, inky blackness cleared enough that I saw his face above me. Drawn, lips pale, violet eyes wide, scanning. "Feyre," I said. "I'm Feyre." His breathing was jagged, uneven. I gripped the wrist that held my throat. Held, but didn't hurt. "You were dreaming." I willed that darkness inside myself to echo it, to sing those raging fears to sleep, to brush up against that ebony wall within his mind, gentle and soft. Then, like snow shaken from a tree, his darkness fell away, taking mine with it. Moonlight poured in, and the sounds of the city. His room was similar to mine. The bed, so big it must have been built to accommodate wings, but all tastefully, comfortably appointed. And he was naked above me, okay? Utterly naked. I didn't dare look lower than the tattooed panes of his chest. Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. No. It'd be real difficult not to, but oh, you shouldn't do that. Nope. Feyre, he said, his voice hoarse, as if he'd been screaming. Yes, I said. He studied my face, the taloned hand at my throat, and released me immediately. I lay there, staring up at where he now knelt on the bed, rubbing his hands over his face. My traitorous eyes indeed dared to look lower than his chest, but my attention snagged on the twin tattoos on each of his knees, a towering mountain crowned by 3 stars, beautiful, but brutal somehow. You were having a nightmare, I said, easing into a sitting position. Like some dam had been cracked open inside me, I glanced at my hand and willed it to vanish into shadow. It did. Half a thought scattered the darkness again. His hands, however, still ended in long black talons, and his feet, they ended in claws too. The wings were out, slumped down behind him, and I wondered how close he'd been to fully shifting into that beast he'd once told me he hated. He lowered his hands, talons fading into fingers. I'm sorry. That's why you're staying here, not at the house. You don't want the others seeing this. I normally keep it contained to my room. I'm sorry it woke you. I fisted my hands in my lap to keep from touching him. How often does it happen? Reese's violet eyes met mine, and I knew the answer before he said, As often as you. I swallowed hard. What did you dream of tonight? He shook his head, looking toward the window, to where snow had dusted the nearby rooftops. There are memories from under the mountain, Feyre, best left unshared, even with you. He'd shared enough horrific things with me that they had to be beyond nightmares then. But I put a hand on his elbow, naked body and all. When you want to talk, let me know. I won't tell the others. I made to slither off the bed, but he grabbed my hand, keeping it against his arm. Thank you. I'd studied the hand, the ravaged face. Such pain lingered there, and exhaustion. The face he never let anyone see. I pushed up onto my knees and kissed his cheek, his skin warm and soft beneath my mouth. It was over before it started, but how many nights had I wanted someone to do the same for me? His eyes were a bit wide as I pulled away, and he didn't stop me as I eased off the bed. I was almost out the door when I turned back to him. Reese still knelt, wings drooping across the white sheets, head bowed, his tattoos stark against his golden skin. A dark, fallen prince. The painting flashed into my mind, flashed, and stayed there, glimmering, before it faded. But it remained, shining faintly, in that hole inside my chest. The hole that was slowly starting to heal over. Oh, chapter 38. Is she gonna paint again? I want her to paint. That to me would just mean she's feeling better, and I want that. Also, he's naked. No shame, that boy. He sleeps naked. Yes, so naked. All right, y'all. I think we can probably get through chapter 39. And then it'll be time for Jackie's stream, where we can all paint a pot. I won't be painting a pot, because I don't have a pot to paint right now. All of my pots are currently otherwise engaged. Okay. I will say I also haven't brought up yet the graphic that I have up here in the corner. It's my new tracking thingy for my Jamboree donations, so if you have it, I'd really appreciate a donation towards getting me to the Jamboree in Nashville. The LPN Jamboree. You can donate $25 or more if you would like a signed pinup photo of myself. Some of you have already very graciously donated, and I thank you so much. You know where to get in touch with me so that we can get that arranged for you. But in case you forget, you can always just simply send me an email, dottiechampagne@gmail.com. I'm at dottiechampagne on all the things. You can find me anywhere under that, so no worries there. But yeah, so if you can do that. The link pops up in chat every so often, or you can always go to bit.ly/DottieDono to just lend your girl a hand with this very expensive trip. And chapter 39 it is. You think you can decode it once we get the other half? I said to Amren, lingering by the front door of her apartment the next afternoon. She owned the top floor of a 3-story building, the sloped ceiling ending on either side in a massive window. One looked out on the Sidra, the other on a tree-lined city square. The entire apartment consisted of one giant room. The faded oak floors were covered in equally worn carpets. Furniture was scattered about as if she constantly moved it for whatever purpose. Only her bed, a large 4-poster monstrosity canopied in gossamer, seemed set in a permanent place against the wall. There was no kitchen, only a long table and a hearth burning hot enough to make the room near stifling. The dusting of snow from the night before had vanished in the dry winter sun by mid-morning, the temperature crisp but mild enough that the walk here had been invigorating. Seated on the floor before a low-lying table scattered with papers, Amren looked up from the gleaming metal of the book. Her face was paler than usual, her lips wan. It's been a long while since I used this language. I want to master it again before tackling the book. Hopefully by then, those haughty queens will have given us their share. And how long will relearning the language take? Didn't his darkness fill you in? His darkness like capital H, capital D. She went back to the book. I strode for the long wooden table and set the package I'd brought on the scratched surface. A few pints of hot blood, straight from the butcher. I'd nearly run here to keep them from going cold. No, I said, taking out the containers. He didn't. Reese had already been gone by breakfast, though one of his notes had been on a bedside table. Thank you for last night, was all it had said. No pen to write a response. But I'd hunted one down anyway, and had written back. What do the tattooed stars and mountains on your knees mean? Just ask him in person. Ask him in person next time you see him. That's not something you need to write on a note right then. He's just saying thanks, come on. Ugh. The paper had vanished a heartbeat later. When it hadn't returned, I'd dressed and gone to breakfast. I was halfway through my eggs and toast when the paper appeared beside my plate, neatly folded. That I will bow before no one and nothing but my crown. That's such a bro answer. That's such a... What a bro-y tattoo to have. I bow to no one. I've ever told you that one time my dad got really mad. He said that to me. We were having a conversation and he got onto the topic of communism because of course he did. And we were in a McDonald's and he got really, really mad. In the middle of a McDonald's, he just looked at me and he said, and they want you to kneel. You know what kneeling is? That's bowing, and I bow to no one. Because he was talking about people kneeling at BLM protests. It was a whole thing. Oh my god. And even in that moment, although I was completely just stunned that he was getting so mad in this McDonald's, it was funny then and it's funny now. He's the drama. I bow to no one. This time, a pen had appeared. I'd merely written back. So dramatic. See, Farrah's on the right tip. She knows what's up. What you doing, music? Come on, wake up. Good morning. Hello. Excuse me. Enough of that. And through our bonds, on the other side of my mental shields, I could have sworn I heard his laugh. Smiling in the memory, I unscrewed the lid on the first jar, a tang of blood filling my nostrils. Amryn sniffed, then whipped her head to the glass pints. You... Oh, I like you. It's lamb, if that makes a difference. Do you want me to heat it up? She rushed from the book, and I just watched as she clutched the jar in both hands and gulped it down like water. Ugh. Well, at least I wouldn't have to bother finding a pot in this place. Amryn drank half in one go. A trickle of blood ran down her chin, and she let it drip onto her gray shirt, rumpled in a way I'd never seen. Smacking her lips, she set the jar on the table with a great sigh. Blood gleamed on her teeth. Thank you. Do you have a favorite? She jerked her bloody chin, then wiped it with a napkin, as she realized she'd made a mess. Lamb has always been my favorite, horrible as it is. Not human? She made a face. Watery, and often tastes like what they last ate. And since most humans have piss-poor palates, it's too much of a gamble. But lamb? I'll take goat, too. The blood's pure, richer. Reminds me of another time and place. Oh, is she a chupacabra? She's just eating goats and lamb. Those are her favorites. I think she's a chupacabra. Thought vampire, but no. Chupacabra. Interesting, I said. And meant it. I wondered what world exactly she meant. She drained the rest, color already blooming on her face, and placed the jar in the small sink along the wall. I thought you'd live somewhere more ornate, I admitted. Indeed, all her fine clothes were hanging on racks near the bed, her jewelry scattered on a few armoires and tables. There was enough of the latter to provide an emperor's ransom. Although I'm still thinking dragon woman. She shrugged, plopping down beside the book once more. I tried that once. It bored me, and I didn't like having servants. Too nosy. I've lived in palaces and cottage and in palaces and cottages and in the mountains and on the beach, but I somehow like this apartment by the river the best. She frowned at the skylights that dotted the ceiling. It also means I never have to host parties or guests, both of which I abhor. I chuckled. Then I'll keep my visit short. She let out an amused huff, crossing her legs beneath her. Why are you here? Cassian said you'd been holed up in here night and day since we got back, and I thought you might be hungry. And I had nothing else to do. Cassian is a busybody. He cares about you. All of you. You're the only family he has. They were all the only family they each had. Ach, she said, studying a piece of paper. But it seemed to please her nonetheless. A gleam of color caught my attention on the floor near her. She lives like Caroline Calloway. She was using her blood ruby as a paperweight. Reese convinced you not to destroy Adriata for the blood ruby? Amryn's eyes flicked up, full of storms and violent seas. He did no such thing. That convinced me not to destroy Adriana. She pointed to her dresser. Sprawled across the top like a snake lay a familiar necklace of diamonds and rubies. I'd seen it before, in Tarquin's trove. How? What? Amren smiled to herself. Varian sent it to me, to soften Tarquin's declaration of our blood feud. I thought the rubies would need to be worn by a mighty female. I can think of no mightier female than the one before me. Did you and Varian... Tempting, but no. The prick can't decide if he hates or wants me. Why can't it be both? A low chuckle. Indeed. I mean, yeah. Correct. Thus began weeks of waiting. Waiting for Amren to relearn a language spoken by no other in our world. Waiting for the mortal queens to answer our requests to meet. Azrael continued his attempts to infiltrate their courts, still to no avail. I heard about it mostly from Moore, who always knew when he'd return to the House of Wind. It always made a point to be there the moment he touched down. She told me little of the specifics, even less about how the frustration of not being able to get his spies or himself into those courts took a toll on him. The standards to which he held himself, she confided in me, bordered on sadistic. Getting Azrael to take any time for himself that didn't involve work or training was nearly impossible. And when I pointed out that he did go to Rita's with her whenever she asked, Moore simply informed me that it had taken her 4 centuries to get him to do that. I sometimes wondered what went on up at the House of Wind while Rhys and I stayed at the townhouse. I only really visited in the mornings, when I filled the first half of my day training with Cassian, who, along with Moore, had decided to point out what foods I should be eating to gain back the weight I'd lost, to become strong and swift again. And as the days passed, I went from physical defense to learning to wield an Illyrian blade, the weapon so fine I'd nearly taken Cassian's arm off. But I was learning to use it, slowly, painfully. I'd had one break from Cassian's brutal training, just one morning when he'd flown to the human realm to see if my sisters had heard from the queens and deliver another letter from Rhys to be sent to them. I assumed seeing Nesta went about as poorly as could be imagined, because my lesson the following morning was longer and harder than it had been in previous days. I'd asked what exactly Nesta had said to him to get under his skin so easily, but Cassian had only snarled and told me to mind my own business, and that my family was full of bossy, know-it-all females. Part of me had wondered if Cassian and Varian might need to compare notes. Yeah, he wants to fuck your sister. Duh. Most afternoons, if Rhys was around, I'd train with him. Mind to mind, power to power. We slowly worked through the gifts I'd been given, flame and water, ice and darkness. There were others we knew that had gone undiscovered, undelved. Winnowing still remained impossible. I hadn't been able to do it since that snowy morning with the Ator. It'd take time, Rhys told me each day, when I'd inevitably snap at him. Time to learn and master each one. He infused each lesson with information about the High Lords whose power I'd stolen. About Baron, the cruel and vain High Lord of the Autumn Court. About Callius, the quiet and cunning High Lord of Winter. About Hellion's Spellcleaver, the High Lord of Day. Hellion's Spellcleaver? That's the coolest name on here. Whose 1,000 libraries had been personally looted by Amarantha, and whose clever people excelled at spellwork and archived the knowledge of Prythian. Oh, they're so smart. These smart people. Knowing who my power had come from, Rhys said, was as important as learning the nature of the power itself. We never spoke of shape-shifting, of the talons I could sometimes summon. The threads that went along with us looking at that gift were too tangled, the unspoken history too violent and bloody. So I learned the other courts' politics and histories, and learn their master's powers, until my waking and sleeping hours were spent with flames singeing my mouth and hoarfrost cracking between my fingers. And each night, exhausted from a day of training my body and powers, I tumbled into a heavy sleep laced with jasmine-scented darkness. Even my nightmares were too tired to hound me. On the days when Reese was called elsewhere to deal with the inner workings of his own court, to remind them who ruled them, or mete out judgment, to prepare for our inevitable visit to Highburn, I would read, or sit with Amren while she worked on the book, or stroll through Valaris with Moore. The latter was perhaps my favorite, and the female certainly excelled at finding ways to spend money. Women be shopping! Christ. Right, Kadrisha? That was a D&D-ass name. I can't believe Feyre just said women be shopping, though. Come on. I'd peeked only once at the account Reese had set up for me. Just once, and realized he was grossly overpaying me. Especially because he's, not letting you spend any of it. He's like, yeah, I'll pay you shit tons of money, but also you can just use my money and not that money. I mean, women do be shopping, but also men be shopping too. Everybody be shopping. It's called capitalism. But also, I be shopping. I gotta stop. It's bad. I tried not to be disappointed on those afternoons that he was gone. Tried not to admit that I'd begun looking forward to it, mastering my powers and bantering with him. But even when he was gone, he would talk to me in the notes that had become our own strange secret. One day he'd written to me from Césaire, a small city in the northwest, where he was meeting with the few surviving priestesses to discuss rebuilding after their temple had been wrecked by Hybern's forces. So they be shopping too! None of the priestesses were like Ianthe, he'd promised. Tell me about the painting. I'd written back from my seat in the garden, the fountain finally revived with the return of milder weather. There's not much to say. Tell me about it anyway. It had taken me a while to craft the response, to think through that little hole in me and what it had once meant and felt like. But then I said, "Oh, girl, I shouldn't be shopping, but oops. Yeah, same." But then I said, there was a time when all I wanted was enough money to keep me and my family fed so that I could spend my days painting. That was all I wanted, ever. A pause. Then he'd written, "And now?" "Now," I'd replied, "I don't know what I want. I can't paint anymore." "Why?" "Because that part of me is empty." Though maybe that night I'd seen him kneeling in the bed, naked, maybe that had changed a bit. I had contemplated the next sentence, then written, "Did you always want to be High Lord?" A lengthy pause again. "Yes, and no. I saw how my father ruled and knew from a young age that I did not want to be like him. So I decided to be a different sort of High Lord. I wanted to protect my people, change the perceptions of the Illyrians, and eliminate the corruption that plagued the land." For a moment, I hadn't been able to stop myself from comparing. Tamlin hadn't wanted to be High Lord. He resented being High Lord, and maybe that was part of why the court had become what it was. But Rhysand, with a vision, with the will and desire and passion to do it, he'd built something. Oh, so when you actually want to be the leader, maybe that's good. But also, it can be bad. Oops, all shopping. And then he'd gone to the mat to defend it. It was what he'd seen in Tarquin. Why those blood rubies had hit him so hard. Another High Lord of vision, a radical vision for the future of Prythian. So I wrote back, "At least you make up for your shameless flirting by being one hell of a High Lord." Oh, God. saccharine bullshit. Come on. He'd returned that evening smirking like a cat and had merely said, "One hell of a high lord," by way of greeting. I sent a bucket's worth of water splashing into his face. Yeah, you knew he'd use that. Reese hadn't bothered to shield against it, and instead shook his wet hair like a dog, spraying me until I yelped and darted away. His laughter had chased me up the stairs. Winter was slowly loosening its grip when I awoke one morning and found another letter from Reese beside my bed. No pen. "No training with your second favorite Illyrian this morning. The Queen's finally deigned to write back. They're coming to your family's estate tomorrow." I didn't have time for nerves. We left after dinner, soaring into the thawing human lands under cover of darkness, the brisk wind screaming as Reese held me tightly. My sisters were ready the following morning, both dressed in finery fit for any queen, fae or mortal. I supposed I was, too. I wore a white gown of chiffon and silk, cut in typical night court fashion to reveal my skin, the gold accents on the dress glittering in the mid-morning light streaming through the sitting-room windows. My father, thankfully, would remain on the continent for another 2 months, due to whatever vital trade he'd been seeking across the kingdoms. Near the fireplace, I stood beside Reese, who was clad in his usual black, his wings gone, his face a calm mask. Only the dark crown atop his head, the metal shaped like raven's feathers, was different. The crown that was the sibling to my gold diadem. Cassian and Azriel monitored everything from the far wall, no weapons in sight. But their siphons gleamed, and I wondered what manner of weapon exactly they could craft with it if the need demanded it. For that had been one of the demands the queens had issued for this meeting. No weapons. No matter that the Illyrian warriors themselves were weapons enough. Moore, in a red gown similar to mine, frowned at the clock atop the white mantle, her foot tapping on the ornate carpet. Despite my wishes for her to get to know my sisters, Nesta and Elaine had been so tense and pale when we'd arrived that I'd immediately decided now was not the time for such an encounter. One day I'd bring them all together. If we didn't die in this war first, if these queens could chose to help us. 11 o'clock struck. There had been 2 other demands. The meeting was to begin at 11. No earlier, no later. And they had wanted the exact geographical location of the house. The layout and size of each room, where the furniture was, where the windows and doors were, what room likely we would greet them in. Azriel had provided it all, with my sister's help. The chiming of the clock atop the mantel was the only sound, and I realized, as it finished its last strike, that the third demand wasn't just for security. No, as a wind brushed through the room and 5 figures appeared, flanked by 2 guards apiece, I realized it was because the queens could winnow. Dun dun dun! So the queens are magic. But they're supposed to be human, so what the fuck? Oh boy. So exciting. So we will move on to chapter 40 on Sunday. And I don't know, can we do 5 chapters that day and then 6 chapters the next, or, give or take, because we got to get all the way done with chapter 51 before next Wednesday. Whew. It's a lot. I don't know. But in the meantime, we're just waiting for Jackie to go live, and we will go over there and we will raid so that we can paint a pot. We're going to paint a pot over on, oh no, it's Jackie's channel. Oof. Do. I really wish that they'd let you set up raids in advance. Wait for them to go online. It's dumb. Oh, okay, Trisha. That's okay. You go do your thing. We'll miss you. But, Bod's always there for you. Yeah, we gotta really thunder through this here. And then I've also set up quite a rigorous pace for the next chunk also, because it's shorter. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, because I don't fully know how we're all gonna parse that out. Oh, you might catch a tail end of stream during your train ride. Okay, that'd be good. Something to do on the train. Always good to do that. But yeah, like, I mean, I have to take May 15th off because I'm seeing the last podcast show live in Toronto. So that's 1 week that we're losing already, or 1 day rather, out of our twice a week schedule. And it's all just nonsense from there because I did bad math. So I have to go in and fix it all. Ugh. Jackie is live. Okay, so it's not coming up on the thing. Maybe it just needs a second. Come on, let me do the thing. Math is so hard. There it is. Okay, we're starting the raid. We're going. We're going to Jackie. We're gonna go paint a pot, and we're gonna go see B as well, and it'll be fun. Oh no, too late. Okay, here we go. See y'all over there. Bye. Have a good night. Rating.